Charles Howard, a rigid and emotionally distant real estate tycoon, manages his life and his traumatized mute daughter, Lily, with spreadsheet precision following his wife's abandonment. He hires Belinda Hopkins, a vibrant, no-nonsense woman, as a temporary nanny. Unlike previous staff who followed Brian's strict no-nonsense protocols, Belinda disrupts the household's sterile atmosphere with music, color, and chaotic joy. The story pivots when Brian returns home early to find Belinda lying on the floor, balancing Lily on her feet in a game of airplane, and hears Lily laughing for the first time in 2 years. However, Brian's jealous and elitist fiancée, Eleanor, frames Belinda for theft to get her fired. When Belinda left, Lily's silence returns, darker than before. Realizing his wealth means nothing without his daughter's happiness, Charles breaks his engagement and tracks Belinda down to a community center in her neighborhood, begging her to return not as an employee, but as the partner they both need. Welcome to the Brian's Tales, where every story takes you on an unforgettable journey. Whether it's thrilling adventures, heartwarming moments, or tales that'll keep you on the edge of your seat, this is your destination for captivating storytelling. If you love getting lost in exciting narratives and discovering new worlds with every video, you're in the right place. Don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe, so you never miss out on the next amazing tale. Trust me, you won't want to miss what's coming next. The penthouse had never been this quiet. Charles Howard stepped through the double doors of his $30 million residence, his Italian leather shoes silent against marble floors that cost more than most people earned in a year. He paused in the foyer, frowning. The stillness felt wrong. No crying. No hushed reprimands from whichever nanny was on duty this week. No mechanical toys playing their programmed melodies in the distance. Just silence. His pulse quickened. He loosened his tie, scanning the gallery hall where museum-quality paintings hung in perfect symmetry. Everything was in its place. The security system hadn't been triggered. But something felt off. The air itself seemed different, charged with energy he couldn't name. Lily? His voice came out sharper than intended, echoing through rooms designed for entertaining hundreds, but inhabited by only 2. No answer. Charles moved faster now, his controlled exterior cracking, past the living room with its untouched white sofas, past his late wife's study, still locked, still a shrine. His daughter should be in the nursery at this hour, following the strict schedule posted on every wall. 4 p.m., quiet activities. Educational play only. The nursery was empty. His heart hammered. He pulled out his phone to call security, then froze. Was that laughter? Not the polite, restrained kind. Real laughter, bright and unrestrained and so unfamiliar in this Tuma home that it sounded almost dangerous. Charles followed the sound down the east corridor, his stride lengthening. The laughter was coming from the formal dining room, a space he closed off months ago because Lily had screamed every time she saw the empty chair at the head of the table where her mother used to sit. He reached the doors and hesitated, his hand on the brass handle. The laughter rang out again, pure and full of joy he'd forgotten children could express. His breath caught. Then he pushed the doors open. The scene before him made no sense. His daughter, his broken, silent, unreachable daughter, was standing barefoot on top of the $10,000 Italian marble dining table, her small arms stretched upward toward the crystal chandelier. Her face was flushed with exertion and delight, her copper curls wild and uncombed, her expensive dress wrinkled and grass-stained. And beside her, kneeling on the table with hands positioned protectively but not constraining, was a new nanny, Belinda, the one the agency had sent last minute, the one without the Harvard credentials or the Swiss finishing school references. That's it, Lily. You're almost there. You're the bravest mountain climber in the world. Belinda's voice was warm, encouraging, completely unaware she'd turned his formal dining room into a playground. Lily laughed again, that impossible sound, and took another wobbling step across the marble surface, reaching for the light as if it were a prize worth winning. Charles's carefully constructed world tilted on its axis. This wasn't how things were supposed to be. This wasn't the quiet, controlled, perfectly safe environment he'd built with his fortune. This was chaos. This was risk. This was his daughter standing on furniture, unguarded, unprotected by the bubble wrap of wealth he'd surrounded her with. This was life. And for the first time since he'd buried his wife, Charles felt the ice around his heart begin to crack. Charles Howard hadn't always been a shadow with a wallet. There was a time when he came home at reasonable hours, when he knew his daughter's favorite bedtime story by heart, when the penthouse echoed with conversation instead of silence. That was before the hospital called at 2:47 a.m., before the words cerebral aneurysm and nothing we could do became the dividing line between his old life and this hollow existence. Catherine had been 34, healthy, vibrant. She'd kissed him goodbye that morning, laughing about the fundraiser gala they were planning, her hand resting on their daughter's copper curls. By midnight, she was gone. The grief came in waves at first, crushing, suffocating waves that left him gasping on the bathroom floor while Lily slept in the next room. He tried to be present for his daughter, tried to hold her when she asked for mommy, tried to explain the unexplainable to a child who still believed love could keep people safe. But every room held Catherine's ghost. Her perfume lingered in the closet. Her handwriting covered the family calendar. Her coffee mug sat unwashed in the cupboard because Charles couldn't bear to erase that last lipstick mark on the rim. So he stopped coming home. The office became his refuge. 18-hour days stretched into 20. Deals that could wait until morning demanded his attention at midnight. He told himself he was building Lily's future, securing her inheritance, making sure she'd never want for anything. In truth, he was just running from the silence that screamed his wife's name in every corner of their home. He hired the best nannies money could buy, women with credentials from elite institutions, background checks cleaner than surgical instruments, references from families whose names appeared in Forbes. They lasted weeks, sometimes days. Lily had inherited her mother's fire, and grief had turned it into something wild and unreachable. She threw tantrums that shattered the expensive calm these professionals required. She refused to eat, to sleep, to speak beyond single syllables. The nannies left one after another, their resignation letters polite variations on the same theme. The child requires specialized intervention beyond my expertise. Charles responded by writing larger checks to the next agency, requesting more qualifications, more structure, more control. He approved schedules down to the minute. He installed cameras in every room except Lily's bedroom. Even grief had its limits. He convinced himself that the right expert, the right system, the right amount of money could fix what was broken. He never considered that what was broken wasn't his daughter. It was him. So he buried himself deeper in contracts and acquisitions, in conference calls that spanned time zones, in anything that kept him from facing the truth. He had become exactly what his wife had feared, a man who could build empires but couldn't build a relationship with his own child. A ghost haunting his own life, a shadow with a wallet where a father should have been. Until the day he walked in unexpectedly and found everything had changed. Belinda arrived on a Tuesday with a single suitcase and none of the qualifications the agency usually required. The placement coordinator had called Charles's assistant with barely concealed desperation. "We have someone available immediately. She's unconventional. No formal certifications, but excellent references from families in..." The woman paused. "Less metropolitan areas." Charles had been in Singapore closing a hotel acquisition. He'd approved the hire without asking questions because the alternative was flying home, and flying home meant confronting the chaos his household had become. His assistant assured him the background check was clean. That would have to be enough. Belinda stood in the foyer that first morning, taking in the marble and crystal and art that cost more than she'd earned in her lifetime. She didn't gasp or gawk. She simply set down her worn leather suitcase and smiled at the head of household staff as if she'd been invited to a neighbor's home for coffee. "I'm here for Lily," she said, her accent carrying the soft vowels of rural somewhere. "Where might I find her?" The staff had warned her, of course, prepared her for the tantrums, the silence, the nannies who'd fled in tears. They showed her the schedule posted in the nursery, the emergency contacts, the list of approved activities that read like a prison routine. Belinda read it all, nodded politely, then folded the schedule and tucked it in her apron pocket. Lily tested her within the first hour. The child sat in the center of her playroom surrounded by educational toys that cost thousands, wooden puzzles from Germany, building blocks from Sweden, books in 3 languages. She touched none of them. When Belinda entered, Lily looked up with eyes that had learned not to hope, and then she screamed. Not the cry of a child wanting attention. The guttural, rage-filled scream of someone whose world had shattered and who had no other language left to express it. Belinda didn't flinch. She didn't reach for the child or offer empty reassurances. She simply sat down on the expensive carpet, crossed her legs, and waited. Lily screamed until her voice went hoarse. She threw blocks that clattered against walls. She swept puzzles onto the floor with violent swipes of her small arms. And through it all, Belinda sat quietly, her expression neither judgmental nor afraid. When the storm finally passed and Lily collapsed in exhaustion, Belinda spoke for the first time. "I know you're testing me," she said softly, "seeing if I'll leave like the others. And that's okay. You test me all you need to." She met the child's suspicious gaze with steady warmth. "But I want you to know something, Lily. I'm not leaving. Not today, not tomorrow, not until you believe me when I say it." Lily stared at her, chest heaving, tears streaming down flushed cheeks. "I don't believe you," the child whispered. Belinda smiled. "That's all right. I've got time." It was a promise that would change everything. The breakthrough came in the smallest of gestures. Belinda noticed that Lily pushed away every breakfast the chef prepared. Perfectly arranged fruit plates, organic oatmeal with precise measurements, smoothies in jeweled colors. The child would stare at the food with something like disgust, then refused to eat until the staff grew frantic and called Charles's assistant with updates he never read. On the 3rd morning, Belinda peeled an apple at the kitchen counter. She watched Lily's face as a spiral of red skin fell away, revealing white flesh beneath. The child's nose wrinkled. "You don't like the skins," Belinda said. Not a question. Lily's eyes widened, surprised to be seen. From that moment, Belinda paid attention to everything the world had taught itself to ignore. She learned that Lily hated the sound of the vacuum, so she scheduled cleaning for when they'd be in the garden. She discovered the child loved to draw, but had been given only educational workbooks. So she brought home a simple sketch pad and watched Lily's hands fly across blank pages for hours. And she told stories. Not the sanitized fairy tales from leather-bound books, but stories from her own childhood. Stories about baby lions learning to be brave, about birds who forgot how to sing until someone reminded them, about mountains that seemed too high to climb until you took the first step. "My grandmother used to say," Belinda murmured one afternoon as they sat in the garden, "that broken things can grow back stronger, like a tree that loses a branch in a storm. It hurts. It leaves a scar. But come spring, new growth appears right where the wound was." Lily looked up from her drawing. "Does the tree remember? The branch that's gone." "Always," Belinda said softly. "But remembering doesn't mean it can't grow something beautiful again." The dining table incident happened 3 weeks after Belinda's arrival. Lily had been staring at the formal dining room for days, lingering in the doorway as if drawn to something she couldn't name. Belinda understood. The room held ghosts. The empty chair, the 2 quiet meals, the memory of better times. "Want to climb a mountain?" Belinda asked suddenly. Before Lily could answer, Belinda had kicked off her shoes and climbed onto the marble table. She held out her hand, grinning with the kind of mischief that belonged in this mausoleum of a home. "It's not allowed," Lily whispered, but her eyes sparkled. "I won't tell if you won't." Lily took her hand. Together, they conquered the table, reaching for the chandelier like it was the summit of Everest. And when Lily stood on her own, wobbling but determined, laughing with pure joy, that was when Belinda knew the child she'd been hired to watch was finally beginning to heal. That was when Charles walked in, felt foreign in his mouth. Belinda shifted her weight, protective. She's always been capable of happiness. Mr. Howard. She just needed someone to believe it was still there. The accusation hung unspoken between them. You stopped believing. Charles looked at his daughter. Really looked at her for the first time in months. Her copper curls were tangled from play. Her dress had a grass stain on the hem. Her feet were bare and there was color in her cheeks and life in her eyes, and she looked so much like Catherine in this moment that his chest physically ached. "Lily," he said quietly, Did you really climb all the way up there? She nodded, uncertain. That's very brave. Something shifted in her expression. Not trust, not yet, but the possibility of it. Charles loosened his tie and did something he hadn't done in 8 months. He smiled at his daughter. I haven't had breakfast yet. Would you two join me? Belinda's eyebrows rose. Sir, you usually eat at the office. Not today. He moved toward the table, pulled out a chair. Not his wife's chair. Not yet, but one nearby. Today I'm staying for breakfast. And for the first time since Catherine's death, Charles Howard sat at a table with his daughter, and they ate together. The conversation was halting, awkward, full of silence that felt less like grief and more like new beginning. Lily kept glancing at him, as if he might disappear. Belinda watched them both with something like hope in her eyes. When Lily laughed at something Belinda said, that bright, impossible sound, Charles felt the crack in his heart widen into something that might one day resemble healing. He had an acquisition meeting in an hour. His assistant had called twice. The Tokyo office needed his signature on contracts worth millions. For the first time in 8 months, none of it mattered more than this. Tell me about this mountain you climbed, he said to his daughter. And Lily, hesitantly, began to speak. Eleanor Howard arrived unannounced on a Thursday, the way she always did, as if the penthouse belonged more to her than to her son. She swept through the foyer with the bearing of someone who'd spent 70 years commanding rooms simply by entering them. Her silver hair was pulled into a flawless chignon. Her Chanel suit probably cost more than Belinda, made in 6 months. She was elegance itself, and she wielded it like a weapon. Charles. She didn't ask if he was home. She knew his schedule better than he did. We need to discuss the household situation. Charles looked up from the floor where he'd been building a block tower with Lily, an activity that would have been unthinkable a month ago. Mother, I didn't know you were coming. Clearly. Eleanor's gaze swept over the scene with barely concealed distaste. The blocks scattered on expensive carpet. Lily's uncombed hair. Charles in shirt sleeves at 3 in the afternoon. Where's the nanny? Belinda's in the kitchen, making lunch. I see. 2 words that contain volumes. Might I speak with you privately? In his study. Eleanor didn't sit. She stood by the window overlooking the city, her back rigid with disapproval. How long has this been going on? How long has it been going on? Don't be obtuse, Charles. Your assistant says you've been leaving the office early, missing meetings. Your mother tells me you've been eating breakfast at home. She turned to face him. You're getting attached. She's my daughter. I'm not talking about Lily. Eleanor's eyes were sharp. I'm talking about the help. Charles felt his jaw tighten. Belinda is excellent with Lily. She's the first nanny who's lasted more than. She has no credentials, no education, no proper training. Eleanor moved closer, her voice dropping. She's making you soft, Charles. Look at yourself, playing on the floor like a child, letting your business suffer. Is this what Catherine would have wanted? The mention of his wife was a deliberate strike. Don't. Someone has to say it. Eleanor's expression softened, but only slightly. You're grieving. I understand, but you have responsibilities. Lily needs structure, discipline, proper guidance. Not some small-town girl who lets her climb on furniture. Lily needs love, Charles said quietly. Something I forgot how to give her until Belinda reminded me it was possible. Eleanor's lips pressed into a thin line. I've already contacted the Wellington agency. They have someone available next week. Harvard-educated, trained in childhood development, references from 3 ambassadors' families. Someone appropriate. Mother, this isn't negotiable, Charles. Her voice was steel-wrapped in silk. That woman is not one of us. She doesn't understand our world, our expectations, our standards. The longer she stays, the more attached Lily becomes, and the harder it will be when reality inevitably intervenes. She moved toward the door, then paused. I'll handle this discreetly. You don't need to concern yourself with the details. Just trust that I'm doing what's best for this family, the way I always have. After she left, Charles stood in his study for a long time, listening to the sound of his daughter's laughter drifting from the other room. His mother's words echoed in his mind. She's not one of us. He knew he should go to Belinda, warn her. But part of him, the part that had been shaped by Eleanor's expectations, by wealth and propriety, and the belief that there was a right kind of people and a wrong kind, that part hesitated. It was a hesitation that would cost him everything. Belinda found the envelope on her pillow 3 days later. She'd been with the Howards for 6 weeks. 6 weeks of watching Charles slowly emerge from his grief, of seeing Lily blossom from a silent, angry child into someone who laughed and played, and occasionally whispered, "I love you" at bedtime. 6 weeks of believing she was making a difference. The envelope was cream-colored, expensive. Her name was written in elegant script across the front. Inside was a check for $500,000. Below it, a note in the same perfect handwriting. "You've done admirable work, but it's time. There's a car waiting downstairs to take you wherever you'd like to go. A fresh start, a new life. This should be more than enough. The family thanks you for your service. You'll understand this is what's best for everyone, particularly the child. H." Belinda sat on the edge of the narrow bed in her small room and stared at the check until the numbers blurred. $500,000. More money than she'd see in 10 lifetimes. Enough to help her sister pay off medical debt. Enough to fix her parents' roof. To send her nephew to college. To never worry about bills again. All she had to do was leave. She thought about Lily's face that morning. The way the child had reached for her hand at breakfast. She thought about the promise she'd made. "I'm not leaving. Not until you believe me." She thought about Charles, who'd finally started having conversations with his daughter instead of just providing for her. And she thought about Eleanor Howard's cold eyes, the unspoken threat in that note. Leave now, quietly, or become a scandal that hurts this child you claim to care about. Belinda was many things, but she wasn't naive. She knew how this world worked. She'd always known she didn't belong in penthouses with marble floors and crystal chandeliers. She was a small-town girl who'd learned to peel apples and tell stories about baby lions. She had no weapons against people like Eleanor Howard except her presence, and Eleanor had just bought that away. If she fought, there would be lawyers and accusations, and Lily caught in the middle. If she stayed, Eleanor would make sure everyone knew she was inappropriate, unsuitable, a gold digger who'd seduced a grieving widower. The scandal would touch Lily, mark her, hurt her in ways Belinda couldn't protect her from. So Belinda did the only thing she could do. She packed her single suitcase. She wrote a note, not to Eleanor, but to Lily, explaining in simple words that sometimes people have to leave even when they don't want to, that love doesn't always mean staying, that Lily was brave and strong and would be okay. She left the check on the dresser, uncashed. The car was waiting, as promised, as they pulled away from the building. Belinda looked back once at the penthouse windows. She couldn't see Lily's room from this angle, couldn't see Charles's study where he was probably buried in work again. She'd kept her promise. She hadn't left. She'd been bought away. And somehow, that felt like an even deeper betrayal. Charles came home at 6:30 to find his mother in the living room, sipping tea as if nothing had happened. Where's Belinda? He'd been calling her phone all afternoon after Lily's teacher mentioned she hadn't shown up for the usual handoff after preschool. Gone. Eleanor set down her cup with precise care. I gave her a generous severance and arranged transportation. She seemed quite grateful for the opportunity to start fresh. The floor seemed to tilt beneath Charles's feet. You did what? What needed to be done? Eleanor's expression was serene. Charles, you were becoming inappropriately dependent on the help. It was affecting your judgment, your work, your... Where is she? His voice came out dangerously quiet. I didn't ask. That would have been improper. Eleanor stood, smoothing her skirt. The Wellington Agency's candidate arrives Monday. She comes highly recommended. You'll see that this is for the... Daddy? They both turned. Lily stood in the doorway of the living room, still wearing her school uniform, her copper curls in the careful braids Belinda had woven that morning. She held Belinda's note in her small hand, crumpled from clutching. Where's Belinda? Her voice was small, fragile. She said she had to go away, but she promised she wouldn't leave. Charles crossed the room. and knelt in front of his daughter. "Lily, I'm going to fix this. I'm going to bring her back." "You can't." Lily's eyes were filling with tears. "They always leave. Mommy left. Belinda left. Everyone leaves." "No, sweetheart, Belinda didn't choose." But Lily was already shutting down. Charles could see it happening, the light dimming in her eyes, the walls going back up. She pulled away from him and walked to her room with mechanical steps, leaving the note behind. Charles picked it up. Belinda's handwriting was simple, honest, nothing like his mother's elegant script. The words broke his heart. "You are the bravest mountain climber I've ever known. Keep reaching for the light. Baby lion. You're going to be okay." He turned to his mother, the note trembling in his hand. "How much did you pay her?" "Charles." "How much?" Eleanor's mask of serenity cracked, just slightly. 500,000. I thought it more than generous for 6 weeks of work." She didn't take it. He knew this without asking. Belinda hadn't left for money. She left because his mother had given her no choice, had framed it as protecting Lily from scandal, from pain, from whatever consequences Eleanor had implied would follow if she stayed. Of course she took it. "Don't be—" "You bought her silence," Charles said, his voice hollow. "You made her believe leaving was the only way to protect Lily. And now my daughter's up in her room, convinced that everyone she loves abandons her because you couldn't stand that someone from the wrong background was making us happy." Eleanor's composure finally shattered. "I was protecting this family. That woman was inappropriate, unqualified, getting ideas about her place." "Her place?" Charles laughed, bitter. "Her place was making my daughter laugh again. Her place was reminding me how to be a father. Her place was bringing life back into this mausoleum we've been living in since Catherine died." He moved toward the door, already pulling out his phone. "Where are you going?" "To bring her back." He paused in the doorway. "And Mother? You're not welcome in my home until you understand what you've taken from us." In Lily's room, he found his daughter sitting on her bed, staring at nothing. She hadn't touched her toys, hadn't changed her clothes. She'd simply stopped. "Hey, baby lion," he said softly, sitting beside her. "Want to go for a drive?" "Where?" "To find Belinda." He took her small hand. "I don't know where she went, but we're going to find her, even if it takes all night, even if it takes a week. We're going to bring her home." Lily looked up at him, her eyes filled with a hope so fragile it hurt to see. "You promise?" Charles thought about all the promises he'd broken since Catherine died. The promise to be present, the promise to prioritize his daughter, the promise that money couldn't fix everything. "I promise," he said, "and this time I'm keeping it." They left at 8 p.m. with one suitcase, Lily's stuffed rabbit and a name, Belinda Morrison, hometown unknown but somewhere in the rural South based on her accent, and the one time she mentioned her grandmother's church. Charles's assistant worked miracles, tracking employment records, previous addresses, family connections. By midnight, they had a location, Augusta, Georgia. Population 200,000. A 13-hour drive from the city. Charles should have booked a private jet, should have had his driver handle it, should have done this the efficient, controlled way he handled everything. Instead, he put Lily in the back seat of his rarely driven sedan and started driving. For the first 3 hours, Lily slept. Charles drove through the darkness, his mind replaying every moment of the past 6 weeks. The first time he'd heard Lily laugh. The breakfast where they'd talked about climbing mountains. The look on Belinda's face when she told him Lily had always been capable of happiness. She just needed someone to believe it. He'd been so focused on providing the right environment, the right education, the right everything, that he'd forgotten children didn't need perfection. They needed presence. Around 3 a.m., somewhere in Virginia, Lily woke up. "Daddy." Her voice was small in the darkness. "Are you sure she wants to come back?" Charles glanced at her in the rear-view mirror. "What do you mean?" "Maybe she left because she doesn't want to be with us anymore." Lily clutched her rabbit tighter. "Maybe we're too broken." Charles pulled over at the next rest stop. He got out, opened the back door, and sat beside his daughter in the back seat. "Lily, look at me." She did, her eyes too old for a child her age. Belinda didn't leave because of you. She left because my mother made her believe that leaving was the only way to protect you. He took a shaky breath. And she was wrong. My mother was wrong. I was wrong for not stopping it. But what if she doesn't come back? Then I'll keep asking until she does. He brushed a copper curl from her face. Catherine's hair, Catherine's eyes, but her own brave spirit. Sometimes the people we love make mistakes. Sometimes they don't fight hard enough for the things that matter. But that doesn't mean we stop trying to make it right. Did you make a mistake with Mommy? The question hit him like a physical blow. What do you mean? Before she went away, did you tell her all the things? All what things? The important things. Lily's voice wavered. I didn't tell Mommy I loved her the last day. I was mad because she wouldn't let me have cookies for breakfast. And then she went away and I never got to tell her. Charles pulled his daughter into his arms, his own eyes burning. Oh, Lily, baby, Mommy knew. She knew every single day how much you loved her. But I didn't say it. You didn't have to. The way you hugged her, the way you smiled when she came home, the way you wanted to be near her, that was saying it. He held her tighter. And yes, I made mistakes with Mommy too. I worked too much. I didn't say the important things enough. But I'm not making that mistake again. They sat in the parked car at the rest stop, holding each other while trucks rumbled past and dawn began to break over the highway. Tell me about Mommy, Lily whispered. The real things, not the things people say at fancy dinners. So Charles did. He told her about how Catherine sang off-key in the shower, how she cried at commercials with puppies, how she wanted to be a painter, but her family insisted on business school, so she painted in secret in that locked study he still couldn't enter. How she'd fallen in love with him not because of his money, but in spite of it, because she saw past the walls he'd built. She sounds like Belinda, Lily said eventually. Yeah, Charles said softly. Yeah, she does. They drove the rest of the way as the sun rose, finally talking about the things that mattered, about grief and love and fear and hope, about Catherine and Belinda, and what it meant to let people in even when you knew they might leave. Daddy, Lily said as they crossed into Georgia, even if Belinda doesn't come back, I'm glad we're trying. Charles reached back and squeezed her hand. Me too, baby lion. Me too. They found her at 10 a.m. on a Sunday at a small white church on the edge of Augusta. Charles had called every Morrison in the county. Most hadn't answered. 2 had hung up when he mentioned his name. Finally, an older woman, Belinda's aunt, had told him curtly that Belinda would be at Sunday service and that rich folks should think twice before disrupting a house of God. The church was nothing like the places Charles usually spent Sunday mornings. No soaring ceilings or stained glass masterpieces. Just a simple building with peeling paint and a cross on the roof. Cars filled a gravel parking lot. Old models, dented bumpers, the kind of vehicles people drove when they were one breakdown away from walking. Charles parked a sedan, aware of how it stood out. Lily was already unbuckling her seatbelt. Stay close to me, he said, but she was already running. They found Belinda in the front pew. She was praying, her head bowed, her shoulders curved as if bearing weight. She wore a simple cotton dress, her hair pulled back, and she looked so much smaller than she had in his penthouse, as if leaving had diminished her. Belinda. Lily's voice rang out in the quiet church. Belinda's head snapped up. Her face went through a dozen emotions in seconds. Shock, joy, fear, and something that looked like pain. Lily? Mr. Howard? What are you? Lily ran to her, and Belinda caught her instinctively, pulling the child into her arms even as tears started streaming down her face. You left, Lily said, her voice muffled against Belinda's shoulder. You promised you wouldn't leave. I know, baby, I'm so sorry. My grandmother paid her to go. Charles moved closer, aware of the eyes watching from other pews. She didn't want to leave, Lily. She was trying to protect you. Belinda looked up at him, her eyes red. You shouldn't have come. Your mother was right about. My mother, Charles said quietly, was wrong about everything that matters. He knelt in front of them both. This man who commanded boardrooms and closed million-dollar deals, humbling himself in a small church in front of strangers. Belinda, I'm sorry. I should have protected you. I should have told my mother that you weren't the help you were. His voice caught. You were saving us. Both of us. Mr. Howard. Charles, please. He met her gaze. I know I have no right to ask this. You came into our lives and gave everything, and we repaid you by letting you be pushed out. But Lily needs you. I need you, not as a nanny, not as an employee. He took a breath. As family. Belinda was crying openly now. I don't fit in your world. I never will. I don't have the education, the background, the... You have love, Lily interrupted, her small voice fierce. And that's better than all the other stuff. She's right, Charles said. I've spent the last 8 months trying to buy my way out of grief, trying to hire people to fix what was broken. But you didn't fix us, Belinda. You just believed we were worth healing. And that belief...
And that's where our story ends today. Charles Howard learned that true wealth isn't measured in properties or bank accounts, but in the laughter of a child and the love that fills a home. Sometimes the people we need most come into our lives in the most unexpected ways, breaking down our walls and teaching us what really matters. I hope this story touched your heart as much as it did mine. If you enjoyed Charles, Lily, and Elizabeth's journey, please hit that like button. It really helps the channel grow and lets me know you want more stories like this one. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already, and make sure to turn on those notifications so you never miss a new tale. We've got so many more incredible stories coming your way. Share this video with someone who needs to hear this message today. Someone who believes in second chances, the power of love, or the courage it takes to choose what truly matters. Drop a comment below and let me know. What was your favorite moment from today's story? Was it Lily's first laugh, Elizabeth's unwavering spirit, or Charles's ultimate redemption? Thank you so much for being part of the Brian's Tales family. Until next time, remember, the best stories are the ones that remind us of our own humanity. See you in the next tale.